Hi everyone, welcome to Studio Jake. I, of course, am your host, Jacob Airy. Be sure to like this video, share it because we're going live right now. Be sure to subscribe and ring that little bell because as Steven Crowder says, we all know subscriptions don't mean anything. So I'm excited to have back with me Rosemary Dewar. She's one of my all-star guests, as I call them. And we're talking about, just with everything that's going on recently, we've had Kanye West tweet himself out with a MAGA cap and saying that he likes how certain conservatives think. He's watching Scott Adams and Jordan Peterson. Hopefully next will be Dave Rubin and Ben Shapiro, but we're not holding our breaths. And then we have Kim Kardashian visiting Trump in the White House and posing for a picture. So I invited Rosemary on. She's going to give us some really good perspective on this. Rosemary, thank you for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me back, Jacob.
So we see it's kind of started with Kanye. We see him, he tweets out, I really like how certain conservatives think. He tweets a picture with a MAGA cap on. He's getting into arguments with John Legend, and he screenshots those arguments from his text messaging and puts them on Twitter and so on and so forth. And conservatives are going crazy. I mean, I had some conservatives who I'm friendly with write these thought pieces about, oh, how this is such a great thing. And then same thing now with Kim Kardashian visiting the White House. And I know Kanye or Kim Ye, you know, they're a couple married, I guess. And sometimes I'm going, like, especially with this Roseanne debacle where she tweets very insensitive, racist thing about Valerie Jarrett, who I don't like Valerie Jarrett, but still, it seems whenever we go for these uber famous celebrities who are not conservative, they just tweet out something relatively conservative. Republicans especially fall all over themselves trying to please them, like in the case of Roseanne, and now that's exploded in our face. And I'm just curious, like, why do you think that Republicans and conservatives and even libertarians, they're like, oh, let's just tie our wagon to this one horse and let's just see where it goes. Why do you think that is?
Well, there's this need for conservatives to feel like they're invited to the dinner table, and it's like, well, we want to be the ones also influencing culture, and they think it's like, well, this person has a platform, and well, they said one thing conservative, they said one sentence conservative, and we can kind of draw on that as much as possible. And one of the things that the Democratic Party kind of does right with this is that when a celebrity stops toting the party line, they completely ostracize them, which is exactly what happened to Kanye West. But the Republicans really don't have a good idea on how to do that. And so it's like when it's like, yeah, this person might have one conservative idea, but if they're going to promote something that is completely against what we're trying to conserve, then why are we saying it's like, oh, that's okay, no, that's all right, and we just kind of like pat them on the back and be like, get them next time. It's like, no, if it's not a conservative talking point and it's not a conservative value, why are we trying to pass it off as beneficial in some way? It's not helpful to our movement.
Yeah, and that's something that I never understood is, okay, because other celebrities have done this in the past. They'll say, oh, you know, like the Cardi B thing. And you see, you know, she does this rant on Instagram about where's my money going? And, you know, she used other words, obviously, but she didn't actually say, I don't want to pay taxes. I want to pay less taxes. She never actually said that. She just said, where is my money going? Which, you know, to me, I'm kind of like, you know, I get it. I understand because conservatives know where the money is going. It's going nowhere. That's kind of, you know, where we're trying to, part of conservatism, we're trying to conserve our national economy. But, and so it's just, sometimes it's just out of control. And now so far, Kanye and Kim have not backfired on us. But it's like when Kim was in the White House, she wasn't exactly there for a noble cause. She was there to get a commuted sentence for someone who she says, oh, she's a nonviolent drug offender. Okay, that might be true, but also blackmailers and people who commit financial scams and scam people out of all their retirement, that's not necessarily a nonviolent crime. And this woman, she was accused, tried, and found guilty of poisoning these neighborhoods with narcotics. And even if you're a more libertarian as far as the drug issue goes, I still think that that's not exactly a noble cause. I mean, just because a crime was nonviolent doesn't make it okay, I guess. And so I'm curious, like, for that, I can't remember this person's name, but they're saying, oh, she was a single mother, and now she's a grandma, and now she's just the sweet old lady who's turned her life around in prison, but she can't get out. And I'm just kind of like, well, what about her victims, who became addicted to narcotics because of this drug farm? So I'm curious. Like, we're all for prison reform and sentencing reform, I guess. But what do you think about? Because it just seems like people were more excited about the photo and not really paying attention to why Kim was there in the first place. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's so there's a big difference between quality and quantity.
Right.
And when it comes to this woman that Kim is trying to help get a pardon for, when it comes to crime, there's a big difference between just possession of an illicit drug and then being found someone who distributes it. And then there's a big difference between someone who's a first-time offender and someone who's a repeat. Now, simply because you're a first-time offender doesn't mean it's the first time you've done it.
Right.
It's the first time you were found doing it. So it's like, I'm not extremely versed in her entire case, but it's like you're connected with a Colombian cartel that's known for putting tons and tons of narcotics on the street. And when you have Trump working on an opioid crisis, you're like, well, which one are we trying to fix here? And it's like that quality, even with him with the full pardon of Dinesh D'Souza, which I'm iffy about. Mm-hmm. It's going to be very hard to bring up other types of campaign violations with any other person, simply because you're going to give Dinesh D'Souza a full pardon when he did break the law. And not only did he break the law, he also used his former wife's name to break it. And which is, it's just like, you broke the law, you broke the law. Like, their consequences happen regardless of who did it when and why and whether or not you like them. Mm-hmm. But when it comes, when it comes to celebrities kind of having this moral obligation to change something, or at least change the hearts and minds of their fan base. I mean, it's like, even, what's the actor's name? Jeremy Irons had made the statement that that abortion is a sin. Mm-hmm. Now, we're not asking Jeremy Irons to become a naturalized citizen and then run for governor of California. That's right. Not asking for it. It's like, he said one conservative thing. I'm pretty sure there's going to be plenty of things that I will disagree with him on. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to go around and make him king of a state. Right. Simply one good thing he says. And
it also seems to me that because to me there's also a difference between worship and support. So Ashton Kutcher, he's incredibly left-wing in his politics. However, he does some really great work for girls and young boys who are being put into human trafficking. And of course, I'm going to support Ashton Kutcher in that. I'm going to say, great job. You're putting your money where your mouth is. That's a great cause. I think he actually runs an organization that helps these victims, get rescued with international organizations and with some here in the United States. I will applaud that. But and if Ashton Kutcher actually went to the White House, I would say, good for Ashton Kutcher for, if he's there on that topic. Of course, I'm going to be supportive of that because that's a really good thing. But I'm not going to then turn around and say, oh, wow, it's so great that Ashton Kutcher is now, he is breaking the mold. He's speaking to the culture. And it seems, especially in the era of Trump, there's this, which, I can't deny Trump has done some really good things in his first 2 years, or coming into his second year as the president, but there seems to be this cognitive dissonance lack of cognitive dissonance between support over one good thing that a celebrity does and, oh, now we have to just full on support this person. it seems like, where do you think this goes? Do you think this it's all or nothing mentality is going to hang around us, or you think no, it's just a couple of these things are all or nothing? But it just seems to me like everything is all or nothing. There's no middle ground, if you will.
Well, I think a lot of the binary situations that especially conservatives put themselves in, or even religious conservatives put themselves in. Andrew Klavan said something that was very insightful late last month about how you have to evaluate what is good from what is not valuable.
Right.
Even if both of those things are in the exact same person. It's like, yes, Trump is doing some very conservative things except for the tariff stuff, and his past is completely full of debaucherous man using stuff, and you're just like, that is gross. But it's kind of like that picture between in the movie Amadeus, where you have Salieri and Mozart. It's like Mozart is this very carefree, bubbly, not responsible character, and Salieri just kind of finally sits down with God and says, I'm going to make an enemy of you because you've allowed this beauty to come out of your creation. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, sometimes you don't get to choose the vessel where something good comes out of.
Right.
And it's like, and I hate to use hyperbole, but say, for example, someone like, well, let's just go ahead and use Trump. It's like if Trump came up with the cure for a type of cancer, you think we're not going to use that cure for cancer simply because Trump discovered it? No.
Right.
Of course, we're going to use the good that came out of it. But I think that similar to what Ben Shapiro does is you have to not compromise that standard. And there's nothing wrong with people failing that standard and then learning from it and doing better. For people who haven't watched the Sunday special between Joe Rogan and Ben Shapiro today, they really good. They talk about the biological trick that kind of happens with celebrities. It's like it's like the ones that are very well known are very symmetrical. They have an ideal body fat weight, and they're good at this one thing. And somehow we have the halo effect of like, oh, they must be a master at so many things.
Right.
And we forget that their life is completely choreographed in everything that they do. The amount of makeup they wear, the fight scenes that they do, they are not those people. They are good at one thing. They're good at acting. They're good at pretending to be somebody else. And that's it. And it's like, and those ideals are good. It's like even the myths throughout history. You have Zeus, you have Mars, and you have like even Aphrodite or Resh. And so it's like, those are ideas that cannot be met. Now, when it comes to like Christianity or Judaism, you have the actualization of those ideas coming into full manifestation, either in Christ or in the Jewish Messiah that's to come. Mm-hmm. So it's like those things are not necessarily something to be reached, but something to be strived for. Some of those things are so ideal you can't touch, but you're supposed to try to. And you can't continue to move the bar up and down thinking like, well, it's okay to not meet this standard. It's not. You're supposed to strive for it.
And, one thing, too, that kind of bothers me a little bit about this, cult of personality in the era of Trump is I'm concerned because, like, we are supporting all of these, left-wing celebrities. But, like, when an actual conservative / libertarian says something, so, like, Robert Downey Jr., now this is prior to Iron Man, so I know he wasn't quite as famous, or he had been famous, then he kind of fell off. He came back because of Iron Man. Whenever he was released from prison, I can't remember if it's the first or second time, but he did this interview and he said you can't spend time in prison, or you can't go into prison as a Democrat and come out as a Democrat. Or I'm sorry, he may have said liberal. You can't spend time, you can't be a liberal before you go into prison and come out a liberal, something like that. And he had to back off, so much so that during, I think it was for when they were, I can't remember if they were filming Avengers Age of Ultron or Iron Man 3, I can't remember which one it was, but he was doing a press junket and a British journalist really snootily asked him about this. And he's like, and he just dropped out of the interview. Well, I'm kind of like, well, you know, where are the op-eds defending Robert Downey Jr.? In fact, Glenn Beck kind of, you know, I love Glenn Beck. I've met him personally. He's a really great guy. But even Glenn Beck was kind of like, you know, why is he backing off of this? And well, why aren't you defending those comments? I mean, it's not about whether Robert Downey Jr., you know, said this or that, or, you know, you might think he's this way now. Is he in recovery? Is he still struggling with his sobriety? It's like, where were the op-eds? Where were the Fox News columnists writing about all this? And same with Gary Oldman, who's very libertarian. I'm trying to think of other A-listers, you know, Adam Sandler, you know, even Bruce Willis, although I think he's more, I know they're all more libertarian or just economically conservative. Vince Vaughn, I know he's more libertarian. But it just seems like we don't want to jump to the defense of Gary Sinise. Used to lead the Friends of Aid, which was a secret cult of conservatives here in Hollywood. It's kind of like, where are all the op-eds about them? Why aren't we talking about, you know, what they say about the economy or rights or whatever in the era of Trump? And, you know, but as soon as it's someone like Kanye or Kim, and I get Kanye's probably more famous than most of those guys combined, maybe not Robert Downey Jr., but it's just kind of like, oh, we're gonna hitch this bandwagon, and I'm kind of like, well, where were all these guys? You know, there's rumors Christopher Nolan, Mark Wahlberg, maybe even Armie Hammer, although he's tweeted some things I'm not so sure anymore. There are rumors that there's a ton of closeted A-listers in Hollywood. They just keep their trap shut, and I'm like, where are all our conservative people defending them? What do you think the difference is, or do you think it's just, oh, well, it's old news, so it doesn't really matter anymore?
Our culture is simply just not ready for it. They are not ready for a extremely high level of cognitive dissonance where someone can be famous and conservative. They're not. They're just not ready for it. It's. I mean, kind of going back to the idea of Christianity. It's like the conservative movement wants our heroes, and it's like we have our intellectual heroes that we've kind of latched on for decades, like Walter Williams and Thomas Sowell and Milton Freeman and now we have these new people like Ben Shapiro and Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson. But it's like they're not all on the same side of the aisle. They're being pushed there simply because they want to be considered an individual. And it's like within Christianity, I think even Christians have this problem of sticking themselves in the hero picture when it's not about you, and it's about the values that are supposed to be underneath you. And it's like you're not David, because if you're David, everything that comes against you is Goliath. Well, what if that thing is supposed to be teaching you a lesson instead of being an enemy to you? And I think it's one of the biggest issues that even either newer conservatives or baby conservatives into this movement don't quite get a grasp on. So you can't stamp out what has come underneath you. But again, I still feel like there's that fear of it's like, well, we've got culture now and maybe we'll lose it. It's like, no, your conservative values aren't going anywhere. Mm-hmm. Like we've already seen ever since the 60s that anytime we've gotten rid of some of those values, our society goes downhill. And it's like, that's all the proof we need. It's like to try and say, it's like, oh, we've got to have a Charlton Heston, or we need to have this other new figure that voices everything that we have. It's like we're trying to create our own messiah. And I was like, you can't do that. Right. Conservatism doesn't have a form. It just is. I love what Mark Levin says. It's not an ideology. It's a way of living. It's either you live it or you don't. You either work it or you don't. And it shouldn't matter whose face we stick it to at all.
And one final question that this is something that boggles my mind. I've asked conservatives out here in Hollywood why they think this is. I can't really I've gotten two straight answers. One is like, okay, so we have supposedly, allegedly, there's a ton of supposedly closeted conservatives out here in Hollywood. And I'm going, well, why don't they partner with some financial backer and start a studio, and I'm not saying one that produces an obviously conservative / libertarian like Atlas Shrugged. You know, those movies weren't very good, obviously, because they focus more on the message than the actual story. But just make movies in general, and we can have openly conservatives playing roles. They can get Stacey Dash and James Wood and all these other people that are maybe not super worldwide famous or whatever. But and the first response is, oh well, conservatives want to make money and movies are risky, and I'm kind of like, oh, that's a good point. But even though Solo didn't break any box office records, it still made money this weekend. And the other response is, oh, well, then they'll be exiled from the community altogether. And I'm kind of like, well, but if there's so many, then, if everyone came together, it would kind of be I think it would be a good fighting force. But they don't seem to want to do this. So we get like these small hits. Like I know they're doing a Roe versus Wade film. The creators of Frack Nation, their names escape me at the moment, but the husband and wife duo, they're doing a stage play in San Francisco area and all this. And so we get all these like small side stuff, like Roma Downey stuff and some of the stuff PureFlix is doing and things like that. But I'm kind of like, I'm just scratching my head because I really feel like if the conservatives in Hollywood actually got together, despite whatever differences they have, I think that Hollywood wouldn't be able to ignore them. But there's just like this hesitation to do that, and I'm just curious, why do you think that is?
Well, it's like I think they're still testing the market. I think they're still trying to figure out what they're doing. I mean, you have Dana Carvey kind of doing his own thing. You've got Adam Carolla doing his own thing. You've got Norm Macdonald. Now it's like, could you imagine a comedy show that had Adam Sandler, Norm Macdonald, Adam Carolla, and like maybe Bill Burr, and they just all get together and write and do a show for an hour? That would be one of the most hilarious shows on earth, period. And I think they're just like slowly figuring out how to make it profitable, simply because there are a lot of sponsors who are picky about which agenda they want pushed. And it's like at some point there's going to be bigger sponsors that just really don't care. They just want to make money. Capitalism is one color green. It's not blue. It's not red. It's like, we just want people to buy our stuff. We don't care where it's at. So and it's like, even when you have people like Greg Gutfeld's like, oh, we are going to host a fake news award show. Mm-hmm. And Greg is like, I'm going to do that for free. And then you have Andrew Clavin say, well, I want to host it too. So I think the ideas are bubbling, and I think they're just kind of figuring out exactly how they want to present it and build it. I mean, it's like even with Daily Wire, it's like you can tell that eventually they want to become their own Fox News. It's like, let them. It's like competition is the whole point. But I think they're trying to make sure that when they present it, or assert it, it's going to be something worthwhile. And even with Steven Crowder, he wants to be a late night host like Jay Leno. It's like he's got all of the skills to do that, and I would love to see him be able to do that. So it's just like everyone's taking their time building their empires or brands slowly, and that's an okay thing. But I think it's coming. I think that renaissance of entertainment from conservatives is going to happen. It's going to happen soon.
Well, that's really encouraging, because I'm glad you said that, because I was really feeling bummed, but now I feel a little better after hearing you say that. One last thing, and now, folks, I didn't prepare. Normally, I send my guests like a generic topic, and I didn't prepare Rosemary for this question, but I am a little curious what your thoughts are on this, Rosemary, because recently we saw the latest person to get trapped up in Me Too, Morgan Freeman. Now, I am hesitant to believe, because the girl apparently said Alan Alda was there. Alan Alda hasn't said anything. Like, he hasn't said, I support Morgan Freeman's version, I support the girl. So maybe if Alan Alda came out and said, oh, yeah, he did do something. And I know there's like footage of Morgan Freeman kind of flirting with TV hosts or whatever, but you know, I noticed that it's not creating the furor that like Dustin Hoffman and what's his name from Parks and Rec and Aziz Ansari, and it's not really creating like a furor like it did. And do you think that this is a sign that, okay, Me Too has had its moment, it's burned out, it's over and done with. We've got the bad guys, we've got Bill Cosby, we've got Harvey Weinstein, and so on and so forth. Do you think that this is like a sign that it's starting to whimper out, or do you think this is just going to be a continual thing?
I honestly think it's going to end up being continual. There's another actor, Geoffrey Rush, that he also got accused from one of his play members on stage for touching her inappropriately while his character had to literally carry her onto stage. And there's been reports of him not leaving his house and not being able to eat. And I'm just like, I think the definition of harassment and assault has become so broad that it's still keeping people hid that need to be taken out of the industry, and then it's also hurting people that shouldn't have to be dealing with this. Now, everyone's situation is individual. Every woman's situation is individual to them. It's like for something that could be over the line for one isn't over the line for the other. But again, there's like a graduation of from harassment to assault. There's like 10 different legal definitions of that. And when people don't know what those are, you end up throwing people under the bus that shouldn't be there. And I think it's been a real detriment to men. I think it's also been a great hesitance for people to help women in those particular industries. And it's really sad to see. I don't like seeing people being taken advantage of or victimized more. And I feel like the Me Too movement has unfortunately exacerbated the bad part of it instead of actually doing something ultimately good. And I am really sad to see it, but I don't see it going away anytime soon, especially when you have even our own Congress slowly knocking down state reps that are retiring or resigning slowly but surely, and then getting rid of the funding that funds harassment cases. So I think a lot more is still going to come out of it, but it's going to be a slow drip from here on out.
Well, Rosemary, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all at RLYNND1.
And of course, you can follow me here on StudioJake. My Twitter is @RealJacobAiry. My blog is jacobairi.blog. One thing I want to say before I go is I'm having the host of That Sweet Disposition, Megan Harris, for a special live. We're going to be talking about The Punisher and Luke Cage Season 2s coming to Netflix. We're both her and I are super into the Netflix Marvel series, so I'm excited. So there won't be a vlog on Wednesday. It's just going to be on that live special on Monday. And then next Sunday, Stephanie McWilliams she was from Halsey News, and she's written some other great pro-life stuff. She's going to be part 2 of this discussion because Rosemary and I kind of talked about the politics of this, and Stephanie and I are going to cover the spiritual side of it because we're both Christians. She's Catholic and I am evangelical. We're going to be talking about that, about the same topic from that perspective. So thank you so much for watching. Again, don't forget to subscribe for more amazing content like this. Rosemary, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Jacob.